Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm reacting to Fever is Amazing by Gesagt. Of course, for those of you who don't know, a fever is actually a good thing for you, and I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to let the video do that, and I'll put in my own input during the video.
Fever feels bad, so we take medication to suppress it. But is this a good idea? It turns out fever is one of the oldest defenses against disease.
A fever can be good for you.
It
is good for you, but it can be bad if it's too strong.
And should you take a pill to combat it? The heat of life.
You should only take a pill to combat the fever if it's too strong.
Celsius in deep, cool pools and 120 degrees Celsius in thermal vents. Step outside this range and die. Every animal or microbe has a temperature range that's ideal and one that's stressful but survivable for a while. Your ideal temperature is where your cells
If you have a mild fever, just don't take any medication because there is no point, and a fever helps you fight off infection.
Warm-blooded animals,
so just don't take medication. If you have a high fever and you can't stand it, then take medication to fight it off.
Fahrenheit, which seems wasteful, but this may actually be a defensive adaptation. Our temperature makes us almost entirely immune to one of the worst killers and parasites, fungi.
Fungus.
Most colder animals and their insides are infected by them.
This is something I wasn't aware of.
Just too hot, which brings us to fever. For any microbe that
So if humans are immune to fungus, that basically means cordyceps from The Last of Us can't happen because that's a fungus. It's actually a fungus that infects ants. And it's really just creepy. If it happened to humans, it would just be The Last of Us. I mean, it wouldn't be exactly the same, but it would be terrible for humans. Luckily, we're immune, apparently, so that's great.
To infect you, your body is a world they want to conquer. Fever is defensive climate change, pushing an invader outside its ideal temperature range and making the world horrible. It evolved at least 600 million years ago and is widespread. Most animals increase their core temperature when they're sick. Fish swim into warmer waters, lizards bathe in the sun.
Really?
Bees heat up the air inside their hive. But you, warm-blooded mammal, you have
I wasn't aware animals also did that.
Make you sick and see what happens. When your blood turns into lava.
Well, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Animals get sick too,
bacteria
just
and
like humans.
At the same time. The invasion is powerful, and you need to slow it down as fast as possible. Fever is part of your first line of defense, triggered by a diverse group of chemicals called pyrogens, the creators of heat. They float away from the battlefield and pass right into your brain, where specialized receptors pick them up and crank up your internal thermostat. First, you begin to shiver. Your skeletal muscles contract really quickly, which generates a lot of heat in your core. At the same time,
oh, that's why you shiver, because it creates heat?
Surfaces contract and prevent heat from escaping through your skin.
Now the shivering actually makes sense.
Cools down while your insides burn. Fever is a systemic body-wide response and is a serious energy investment for your body. You burn about 10% more calories to stay alive for every degree centigrade your body temperature rises.
You also need to drink a lot to make sure you don't.
Also a strong order
you don't dehydrate yourself
to
too
save
much.
energy and give your immune system time to fight. Back to the battlefield. When the bacteria entered your body, they tried to be stealthy, but now they've switched into high production mode. Their goal is to multiply as fast as possible, which means they need a lot of resources and are highly stressed. Imagine running a marathon while eating a succulent Chinese meal and giving birth. The last thing bacteria need right now is more stress. So your immune system tries to stress them out as much as possible by ordering inflammation, which floods the battlefield with fluids, attack proteins and soldiers. Pretty stressful. Fever is even more stress. For the bacteria a moment ago the temperature range was pleasant. Now the world
and now
burns.
it's like they're in an oven.
Their organs to break and the membranes to rupture, damage their DNA and diminish protein production. They are seriously suffering from the heat. Why doesn't this affect your cells? It does. All of this is stressful for your cells too. Virtually every system and organ of your body works worse during fever, except one, your immune system. Neutrophils are recruited faster.
Really?
Macrophages and dendritic cells are better at devouring enemies. Killer cells kill better, and so on. And fever animates your immune cells to gobble up the critical resources your enemies need, like iron, glucose, and glutamine, turning the battlefield into a food desert. The viruses that infected millions of cells are doing even worse because they're also very sensitive.
Hold on, is that
infected millions of cells are doing
That kind of looks like that Pokemon. I don't know what it was called.
even worse because they're also very sensitive to heat. For example, the rhinovirus that causes the common cold can only infect your respiratory tract because it is significantly colder than the rest of your body, even without fever.
Oh.
The heat is also really bad
wonder
for
why
the
that part of
millions
the
of
body
cells
is just
that are
colder.
infected by viruses at this point. They are working super hard producing viruses, which is pretty stressful. As the heat becomes too much to bear, the super stressed cells panic. As their internal machinery is breaking and failing, they quickly produce billions of heat shock proteins, or HSPs, that start repairs, keeping them alive. But this is a trap.
So that's how you...
Even your healthy cells produce HSPs to deal with the heat, but if a cell makes too many of them, this means it's more stressed than it should be. And if it's too stressed, something is wrong and it should be killed. So your natural killer cells and
so it also
killer
kills the
cells
healthy cells.
are activated and attracted by HSPs and start killing infected cells and all the viruses inside them. By trying to protect themselves, infected cells are calling out to be destroyed. But if fever is such an effective
It's pretty
weapon,
smart.
why don't your enemies adapt to it? How is it still viable in so many different animals after hundreds of millions of years? A wild reason is that fever actually might outsmart evolution. If your enemies survive fever long enough, natural selection changes them. The individuals that are better suited to deal with heat reproduce more. After a few days,
I guess they just don't survive.
But this becomes a handicap because the next step is to infect new victims in new bodies, and now healthy humans are too cold for them. Not impossible to infect, just harder. And the heat-resistant microbes now compete with their cousins that like...
So basically, trying to get a resistance to the heat would actually be detrimental to them because they wouldn't be able to spread as easily.
Make it colder and have an advantage infecting healthy hosts. This creates an evolutionary dilemma without a perfect solution. To circumvent this, serious pathogens like measles use hit-and-run tactics. The measles virus is the most infectious right before your fever hits with full force. It's brutally beaten back once your full immune response shows up, but by then, the damage is done. Fever is an effective part of the puzzle of your immune system, helping to attack and stress your enemies from as many angles as possible. But if fever is so great, why do we stop it when we're sick?
Because it can become too much.
With medications. We think it's normal to have magic pills, but relatively hard.
For example, the only time when I take a pill to fight off a fever is when I'm trying to go to sleep, but I just can't because the fever is too much. Like during the day, I'll just suffer through the fever. Who cares? Whatever. But during the night, fevers always just get worse. So I sometimes just have to take a pill because I can't stand it anymore and I can't fall asleep. But other than that, no medication. Just suffer through it.
Harmless over-the-counter pain medication like aspirin or ibuprofen only became cheap and widely available in the last century or so. Going to a pharmacy to get something for your headache is extremely new in human history. Pain feels bad, so we've gotten used to stopping it when we feel it. If you're sick, you're supposed to feel a reasonable amount of pain, so you lie down and save energy. This is not a bug, but a feature of your immune system. But pain and fever are closely connected, and over-the-counter pain medication like ibuprofen and paracetamol also work against fever. Especially in children, fever is often suppressed by worried parents or doctors, sometimes because they think fever itself is the disease, or they're worried that it can do long-term harm.
How could you think fever is a disease?
At temperatures below 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit, fever is not dangerous and doesn't need to be treated.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, there are also
if it's a low fever, don't take medication. If it's a high fever, then take medication.
And seriously weakened patients. For them, the extra stress may be dangerous. Fever over 40 degrees
Yeah, I
Celsius
guess it also depends
is
on
dangerous to
the
anybody
individual in
because
question.
it's most likely caused by your internal heat monitor failing. Things get more complicated in serious disease territory. We also have evidence that for some diseases like influenza or chickenpox, anti-fever drugs do not help you to heal faster. But we're also running into ethics problems here that make clinical trials difficult. In one study, doctors gave
Yeah, you
strong
can't exactly
anti-fever
experiment
treatment
on
to critical care
humans.
patients, but had to stop after mortality shot up. Overall,
Ooh.
we have strong indications that more people may survive serious infectious diseases better with a fever. And there is very little clinical evidence that stopping fever leads to better health outcomes. But there are
I mean, yeah, the
important
fever is
exceptions
supposed to
like
help you.
neurological injuries
It's
and stroke.
natural.
We definitely need a lot more research. So should you fight fever? Well, speak to your doctor and don't listen to internet videos. But this decision is
Like
really
this one.
about payoffs. If a fever is not dangerously high and you can bear it, you're supporting your defenses and may even get healthy a bit faster. But if you feel really bad and are healthy in general, taking a pill against pain and fever will make you feel better quicker at the cost of a slightly less effective immune defense. However you decide, the next time you're burning up and feeling bad, you can rest easy in the knowledge that your enemies are having a much worse time than you. It's thanks to doctors and
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, if the fever is low, don't fight it. If it's high, fight it. If it's too uncomfortable, take a pill, and there you go. Problem solved. A fever is the body's natural response to infection, so fighting it it's not exactly good. It's not necessarily bad either because, well, we have medication, but personally I feel like it's better to just let the fever run its course because it's natural and you don't exactly want to just keep eating a bunch of different drugs which could have negative effects if you take too much of them or take them too often. So yeah, just as long as you can hold out, don't take any medication. If it gets too much, well then, do what you have to. I also wasn't aware before this video that animals had fevers, which I want to hit myself because that's kind of stupid. I mean, an animal can get sick just like a human, so of course it would have a fever. I don't know why I thought differently. I'm just an idiot. Well, anyway, leave a like, comment, subscribe, the usual YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.